Good morning friends, welcome back to Parnika tutorials. In this video, I want to discuss about what is a constructor, how can you create a constructor, what are the rules you need to follow for creating a constructor, and what are the advantages of constructor. All these things I will discuss. Then I will discuss about the instance variable hiding problem. How can we avoid that problem called instance variable hiding problem with the help of this keyword. All these things I will discuss in detail for you. So I request everyone to watch the complete video for better understanding. First, let me discuss about a constructor. A constructor is a block of codes or a block of statements which is similar to the method, because even for the method we have said a method is a block of code or a collection of statements to perform a certain task. So similarly, constructor is also a method which consists of a block of statements. Then you can ask me, sir, what is the difference between a method and a constructor? A method will have the return type and method name. Am I right? But a constructor will not have the any return type, or you cannot make it as an static method, because if you want to make it as a static method, what you will write, you will use the keyword called static, a return type, method name. But for a constructor, you cannot have anything. You cannot have the return type, you cannot use the static keyword, you cannot use the abstract keyword, all these things. What about the name of a constructor? The name of the constructor should be equal to the name of the class. Okay, then you can ask me, what are the advantages of the constructor? Why we should have when we have the method? Only difference is that a method can have any name, but a constructor should have the same name as the class name, and it does not have the return type, it does not use the abstract keyword, all these things. Okay, there are limitations, but what is the advantage of a constructor? It is called when an instance of a class is created. Whenever you have created an object for a particular class, automatically the constructor will be invoked. You no need to explicitly call the constructor. But normally methods, if it is a static method or the instance method, we need to call them using the class name or using the object name. Am I right? But for an constructor, you no need to call them. It will be invoked directly once you are creating an object. At the time of calling constructor, memory for the object is allocated. Now, when the constructor will be called? When you are creating an object. So, once you create an object, memory will be allocated and constructor will be called. It is a special type of method. Yes, initially only I told you that constructor is a method. So, it is a special method. Why? Because it should have the same name as the class name, which is used to initialize the object. So the advantage, or what is the need for a constructor, is whenever you want to initialize the instance members or instance methods, not instance variables only, okay, because we need to initialize them, because instance methods we will invoke them. So whenever you want to initialize the instance variables of a particular object, then you can use the constructor. Now let me discuss the rules. Okay, the first rule is that the constructor should have the same name of a class. And second thing is that it cannot have any return type. It cannot have any return type. You cannot have int, void, anything, and it cannot permit or you cannot use static, abstract, okay, all these keywords you cannot use. Okay, is it clear? Now let me discuss with an example, or before discussing about an example, the constructors are broadly classified into two types. One is a default constructor, or I can say non-parameterized constructor. You will have a default constructor or non-parameterized constructor, and then you will have parameterized constructor, means you will pass the parameters, because any method will have optional parameters, am I right, or arguments. Similarly, constructor can have parameters Then kind of constructor we will call it as parameterized constructor. Similarly, a constructor cannot have arguments or parameters. Such kind of constructor we will call it as a default constructor. Now for better understanding, I will write a program and discuss about the default constructor and parameterized constructor. Now let me write a simple examples. Let's take that class student. Okay. Now inside the class, let me have two variables called SID, then SName, which is a string type. So string SName. Okay. Now let me have a constructor. The constructor should have the same name as the class name. So class name I have given it as a student and S is capital. So here also the constructor, it should have the student and S should be capital. And let me make it as a default constructor because you are not passing any parameters right now. Okay. It is a default constructor. Let me write it here, default constructor. And then you can have the curly braces open and then you can write system.out.println. Okay, I am default constructor. Okay, I am default constructor. Is it clear? Close this one. Then another constructor I will have student. Okay, having the what you called roll number. Let me write it as RN, and then I will have the name. Okay, two arguments I am taking. Then I will write SID is equal to RN, SName is equal to name. Okay, and I will close this constructor and then I will close the class. Okay, now this is what? It is a parameterized constructor. Okay, parameterized constructor. So what is happening? You have the same name called student and student. One is without parameters and another one is with parameters. So the same method name. So this is what you will call it as overloading. You are overloading the constructor. So this concept you will call it as a constructor overloading because the same name is there but with different signatures. One is without parameters and another one is having two parameters. So this concept we'll call it as a constructor overloading. Now let me create a class called first. Then I will save this program as first.java. You know it because this is my main class. Now I will have the public static void main string aux. Okay, let me write AR. Anything I can give, but it should be a string array. Okay, then what I will do, I will create an object for the student. Okay, so how can you create an object? You need to have the class name and then you will have the variable name and then new class name. Okay, then what will happen? I will discuss with you. Then what I will do, I will create another object called S2 for the same class student. So I will write student S2 is equal to new student. Now what I will do is that I will pass the one and the name as Jagadish. Okay, so now look at here. You are doing what? You are creating two objects, object S1 and object S2. This time you are passing the parameters. Then if you execute this program, let me close the main method and let me close the class. Then what will happen is, look at here, once you create an object, then automatically I said memory will be allocated and the default constructor will be called because this you are not passing any parameters when you are creating an object. So then default constructor will be called and you will get the output as I am default constructor. The next time when you are creating an object called S2, you are passing the arguments. Then this constructor will be invoked, because look at here, when you are not passing any parameters, because the constructor will be invoked. And look at here, as there is no parameters, here there is no parameters, here parameters is there, so this one will be invoked, so you will get the output as I am default constructor. When you are creating an object called s2, you are passing two parameters, so it will look at the constructor which is having two parameters, and whatever the values you are passing, see here you are passing it as rn and you are passing it as a Jagadish. One is there where you are assigning sid is an integer, for that one you are assigning the rn which is having the value, s name is a string, so you are assigning the string Jagadish. Now you need to display, so if as you are not displaying the sid and s name, you will get the only output as I am default constructor. If I want to display the student ID and student name, then what I can do, I can simply write system.out.println s2.sid. Okay, similarly system.out.println, okay, if I write s2.sname, okay, s2.sname, and let me close the main method and let me close the class. If I execute this program, first I will get the output as I am default constructor, then you will get the student ID as 1 and the name you will get the output as Jagadish. So this is the output for the given program. Okay, so what is the use of a constructor? The use of the constructor is to initialize the object, and it will be automatically called when you are creating an object. So let's take that if you are having another object where you are passing one parameter, then it will give an error. Why? There is no constructor called student with single parameter. Only a default constructor is there, a parameters constructor which is having two parameters. So whenever you are passing the arguments, the same constructor should be also there. If not, it will give an error for you. Okay, so now you got the point. Okay, what is actually happening. Now let me discuss about this keyword. Now look at here. This is what this rn and name are the what is the formal parameters. See, this 1 and Jagadish are the actual parameters, because the constructor is also a method. In a method definition, whatever the variables you are using, they are what? Formal parameters. This is what? Calling. So when you are calling, what are the parameters you are passing is an actual parameters. In this case, look at here, sid and sname are what? Instance variables. Okay, and rn and name are what? They are the formal parameters or the local parameters. Am I right or wrong? Because this is within this constructor only, you can use rn and name. Now let's take that I am doing small modification for this program. Instead of rn, I am writing sid and sname. Then if I write sid is equal to sid and sname is equal to sname. So what I am doing, I am providing the local parameters and instance variables as the same name. Then if you write sid is equal to sid, then compiler will be in a confusion whether this sid is an instance variable or it is a local variable, this sid and this sid. And similarly, sname is having an instance variable and it is also a local variable. Then compiler will be in confusion. Then if you display the output as system.out.println s2.sid, s2.sname, then what will happen? It will not give any error. Instead of that one, it will give null and null. Okay, because the compiler is in confusion. So sid and sid, what it is, whether it is an instance variable, whether it is a local variable, then what it will do is that as it is in confusion, which is near, the instance variable or the local variable? Local variable. So it will consider this sid and this sid are the local variables. Instead of considering this as an instance variable, it is considering this SID as a local variable. Similarly, the S name is also a local variable. So this problem we will call it as instance variable hiding problem, because this SID is an instance variable. S name is an instance variable, but you are hiding and the compiler is thinking them it is a local variables. So this problem we'll call it as instance variable hiding problem. To avoid this instance variable avoiding problem, we can use this keyword. Okay, suppose if you want to use the same name of the instance variables and the local variables, then what you can write is that this dot SID is equal to SID. Similarly, this dot SName is equal to SName. And then let me close the method and the constructor. Let me close the class. Then what will happen is that as you are using this keyword, then this SID will be considered as an instance variable. Then this SName is considered as an instance variable, and this SID and SName will be considered as a local variable. So SID is having the value 1, then it will assign the instance variable SID as 1, and SName is having the Jagadish. So instance variable SName will have the Jagadish. So if you write system.out.println and s2.sid and s2.name, then you will get the output as 1 and Jagadish. I hope you have understood about the constructor, what is the need for a constructor, what are the rules for a constructor, and then I have discussed this example, and you would have understood about the instance variable hiding problem and how this problem can be avoided with the help of this keyword. As you are using this, then this SID will be considered as an instance variable. If you does not write the SID, then it will consider SID as a local variable. For better understanding, I will execute this program in the desktop. Now let me take a class, and class name is student, and I will have two instance variables called SID, which is an integer, and SName, which is of string type. So this is our instance variables. Now I will have one default constructor. Constructor is a method which is having the same name as the class name. Okay, as I am not taking any parameters, this constructor we will call it as a default constructor. Here I am writing a statement called system.out.println, and I want to print a statement called I am default constructor. Okay, let me close the default constructor. Let me open a constructor and take the two parameters. One is rn and another one is SName. Okay, instead of SName, we will first take it as name. So we have two formal parameters, okay, called rn and the name, and which is of type int and string respectively. Okay. Now this constructor will call it as a parameterized constructor. Now what I want to do, I want to initialize SID is equal to rn, SName is equal to name. Okay, let me close the student constructor and then let me close the student class. Now I will have the main class. Okay, as this program I have saved it as first.java, so the main class should have the same name as first. Now let me write public static void main string aux. Okay, and then let me create an object called s1 for the class called student. So student s1 is equal to new student. Similarly, I want to create another object called s2 for the class called student. Now here I want to pass the values of 1 and Jagadish. Okay, now if I want to display the instance variables called SID and SName using the object called s2, then I can write system.out.println s2.sid. Similarly, I want to write s2.sname. Then look at here. Let me close the main method and let me close the class called first. Now what I will do, I will open the command prompt, and you know that all our programs will be there in the desktop. In desktop there is a folder called Java programs. Now in this folder we have a program called first.java. I want to compile that one, so I will write java c first.java. As there are no errors, let me run the program by giving a command called java first. Now if I press the enter, I will get the output as I am default constructor 1 Jagadish. Okay, why it is actually happening? Once you create a constructor, okay, is it clear? Not the constructor. Once you create an object called S1, you know that memory will be allocated, and the default constructor will be called. Why the default constructor will be called? Because here you are not passing any parameters. So then it will search for a method which is having the name called student without any parameters. So this one is a default constructor. So it will give the output as I am default constructor. Once you create an object called S2, here you are passing the two parameters, 1 and Jagadish. Then it will search for a constructor which is having the two parameters, one is an integer and another one is a string type. Okay, then here you are writing SID is equal to RN. So SID will have the value called 1 and S name will have the string called Jagadish. If you want to know, let me write it here. S name will have the content called Jagadish for the object S2 only, not for every object. Okay, that's why we are calling them as instance variables. Okay, then if you are printing s2.sid, it will display the output as 1 and it will display the output as Jagadish. Instead of giving two values, I have given only one value, or I am passing one value. Then what will happen? Memory will be allocated and it will search for a constructor which is having only one parameter, and that parameter is an integer. But there is no constructor with a single parameter. Then we will search whether it is an integer type or what it is. Okay, so as there is no such statement, then if I compile this program, let me clear the screen and let me compile the program. See, there is an error. What is that error? Look at here. Error, no suitable constructor found for student int, because you are passing one parameter but there is no such constructor. That is what it is giving an error for you. Look at here, constructor student.student is not applicable. Actual and formal argument list differ in length. So that's why this error is coming. If you rectify that one, okay, and if you give Jagadish here or Jagadish or anything, let me open the command prompt, okay, and let me give the cd desktop java programs, and then what I will do, I will write java c first.java. See, now there are no errors. If I run the program by giving command called java first, I will get the output as I am default constructor 1 Jagadish. Okay, similarly in place of 1 here, if I am providing Parnika, okay, let me save it and again compile the program by giving the command called java c first.java. Look at here, again the error is coming. Incompatible types. String cannot be converted into an int because you have a constructor having two parameters, but one is an integer and another one is a string. But when you are passing them, you are passing two strings. So that's why it is saying that it is an error, and that too it is giving the error as incompatible type. Now we will discuss about the purpose of what? This keyword. So what I will do, instead of rn, I will give the SID, and here in place of name, I will give the S name. So what I am doing, the local parameters names or the local variables names and instance variable names are same. So here if I want to initialize, I will write SID is equal to SID and S name is equal to S name. Okay, then here I am modifying it to 1 or 2. Instead of Jagadish, let me make it Parnika. Okay, because it is Parnika tutorials. Suppose if I clear the screen and let me compile the program. See, there are no errors as I said earlier. If I execute, you will get 0 and null, because it will be considering it as this SID and this SID. Okay, this SID, it will be considering it as a local parameter. So it will be like local parameter is equal to a local parameter or local variable. Okay, is it clear? Local, you should use the word local variable only, better. Okay, local variable is equal to local variable. Now what is actually happening? We want an instance variable, because this SID should be an instance variable. For an instance variable, you want to assign the local variable value, whatever it is. But now it is considering it as a local variable is equal to local variable. So this problem we will call it as instance variable hiding problem. Okay, instance variable hiding problem. To rectify this problem, we can use this keyword. Okay, I will write this dot SID, and similarly I will write this dot SName. Now this SID, which is there in the left hand side, will be considered as an instance variable, and the SID which is there in the right hand side will be considered as a local variable. If I save the program and again compile it, because we have done the modifications, now let me run the program by giving Java first. Now you got the output as 2 and Parnika. So this is the advantage of this keyword. It eliminates the instance variable hiding problem. In the blackboard, I have not written this int and string here. Okay, so that will be the issue. If you does not write it, it will give an error for you. So that's why when I am writing the program, I rectified it. Okay, look at here what is actually happening. If I compile the program again, now you will get an error, SID and SName identifier expected. Okay, so that error will come. So that's why if I write the SID is an integer type and SName is a string type, then this problem will be eliminated and you will get the output. Let me compile again. Okay, and let me clear the screen and let me execute. See, I will got an output. I hope you have understood about the use of this keyword and constructor. If you still have any doubts related to these two concepts, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I will try to clear your doubts as early as possible. Thank you for watching the complete video. Have a nice day.